You've seen a lot of dynamic quarterback play at TCU. You've seen Josh Hoover now for a decent amount of starts. Is he up to snuff? Is he a TCU type quarterback?
Is he a TCU type quarterback? 100%. Absolutely. He checks all of the boxes. Is he a Kendall Briles, Sonny Dykes ideal, how you would take it out of the lab quarterback? No, only in the sense that he doesn't really use his legs. Like, I think they'd certainly like a little bit more mobility out of that position, especially when you look at how bad the run game has been, frankly, the last, season or so. But when you think about what you want leading your football team, you have a guy who turned down a multi-million dollar offer from Tennessee to come back. He is among the most has some of the most yards. He had a 4,000 yard season a year ago. He's committed to the program. He can make all the throws. He's very accurate. If he cuts down on his turnovers, which we saw him do over the second half of last season, he can be an elite college quarterback. There's no question in my mind. We've seen enough of that to believe it. I just think that he has a little bit of growth to do. And he went through his first ever spring ball as the starter this past year. He dealt with injuries the year before. So I think he's progressing at a really appropriate rate. And there's no reason for TCU fans to not be excited and to believe that they have a top one, two, or three quarterback in the Big 12 this year. And that really is saying something. This conference is loaded at that position.
All right. Well, was there anything stated this week, Melissa, beyond the typical coach speak, player speak that stuck out to you that you think was meaningful?
Well, I think that the biggest question for TCU fans kind of comes at the offensive line and the running back positions. And we talked to Colton Deary, who is going to slide back over to center this fall, and just kind of what he's seen as he enters, I think, year three on the campus, and as he really takes over leadership of that group. This is probably the deepest offensive line group that TCU has had since Denny Dykes arrived in Fort Worth. And I think depth at that position is going to be really, really critical. It also is maybe the biggest pound per pound that they've had in Fort Worth. And so that's obviously critically important for establishing the run. And then they bring back some guys that showed some flashes and had some good ability. And Nate Palmer, they went and got Kavorian Barnes out of UTSA, kid that was electric as a true freshman, and then kind of fell off his sophomore year. Trent Battle comes back, and I'm forgetting somebody, and it's really going to bother me that it just slipped my mind. It'll come back to me in just a second, but Jeremy Payne, that's the other one. So you see some talent, you see some opportunity. I kind of pushed Sonny Dykes on that. I said, you didn't really do anything to change this area that was really bad for you, that you needed Savion Williams to bail you out. And he pushed back and says, I think we made a lot of changes. When you look at what we did up front, the offensive line, the guys that get back healthy, and you look at the way that we've constructed this running back room, he's very confident that this will be a strength, not a weakness for the team this year.
So I'm looking at the wide receiver core, and again, TCU always brings to mind certain aspects, characteristics of a football team that's really unique to TCU in football. So there's typically an NFL body guy that is just a freak athlete that can square guys up, 50-50 ball kind of guy. Do they have those kind of athletes?
Let me talk to you about Eric McAllister. That is a well-built wide receiver one. I was so just seeing him in person. He was there representing TCU as a part of media days. He is very tall. He is thick, and he's got great speed. And we saw, when teams really focused on taking away Jack Besh, when Savion Williams was kind of in the backfield, that gave Eric an opportunity to split out and take on more of that ownership and leadership. He had 8 catches for over 100 yards in the first half of TCU's bowl game. Now, look at the competition, look at the bowl, whatever. But at the end of the day, this kid looks like an NFL prospect. He's shown flashes of being able to be an NFL prospect, and he told us that his goal is 1,400 yards, which is a very lofty goal, especially when you look at how TC likes to spread the ball around. But Josh Hoover is very, very comfortable with his chemistry with Eric McAllister, and Eric McAllister certainly has the physical traits and has shown the ability to be an elite wide receiver. The great aspect of that is he won't have to do it alone. I think his 1,400 yards is a little ridiculous, not because I don't think he's capable, but he's got great talent around him. They've really built that room. You don't replace two NFL wide receivers, that easily. But Jordan Dwyer comes over from Idaho. He is a super elite talent with great speed. They brought in Manjack from Houston, a guy nobody's talking about, but I'm on board with this kid just because his 4th of July Instagram post, he had shaved TCU into his chest hair. That told me everything I need to know about how good of a college football player he's going to be. So, but he's really steady. He can kind of take that JP Richardson role. And there's a true freshman that if I don't mention him, Jeremy Clark from 247 Sports will hunt me down. His name is Ed Small. This is a kid that is a day one true freshman, can play wide receiver. He will get snaps both at wide receiver and likely in special teams. He is very mature, both physically and mentally, runs incredible routes, and is kind of reminds you of some of those slot receivers Sonny Dykes has had in the past. So I think that you know, Jack Besh is super elite. He's a very special talent, a very special human being. Savion Williams was a jack of all trades. There's enough talent in that room to cover for the fact that they lost that level of talent. Even if you don't necessarily, I think Eric McAllister is going to be great, but even if he's just, 2 steps better than he was a season ago, I still think there's enough talent for this passing attack to be the best in the Big 12.
Okay. You've sold me on Josh Hoover, an upgraded running back room, freaks at wide receiver. I know we haven't gotten to the defense, but it was decent last year, 45th nationally. So before we get to defensive personnel, like there's always hope in the Big 12. There's hope for everyone, but there certainly should be hope for this team to make a run.
Listen, this is the thing that's so hard about this season. And I see Ed is asking TCU's better than Kansas this year. Yes, I will 100% say TCU finishes above Kansas. The problem and the awesome thing about being a fan of a school in the Big 12, being someone that covers a school in the Big 12, at the end of the day, this TCU team is likely better than last year's TCU team that won 9 games, but could very well finish with fewer wins. The schedule is brutal. Now, the schedule looked really brutal. Sonny kept talking about it at media days, going to Utah in October. Everybody chalked that up as a guaranteed L. TCU went and won that game because Utah was on their 17th string quarterback. Like these things happen. It's college football. So on paper, you open at UNC. So you get the circus that you have with Colorado and Prime a couple of years ago with Bill Belichick. You've got to play SMU for the final time on the schedule. I think it's going to come back, but right now it's the last time, and they kicked TCU's absolute booty a season ago. I want to use a stronger word than that, but this is a family show. And then your reward for getting through SMU is you go on the road for a Friday night game at Arizona State, who made the college football playoff and gave Texas everything they could handle. So that's just September. So the schedule is really difficult. You have to go on the road to BYU. We don't know what they're going to look like with their quarterback situation. You have to go on the road to West Virginia. You go on the road to Kansas State. You get Iowa State at home, who TCU struggled with historically. So the schedule is really difficult, but this is definitely the most mature, most Sonny Dykes era football team that they've had. And they're at the two deep. They're really, really strong at pretty much every position. It's also out of excuses time. I'm not going to sit here and say Sonny Dykes is on the hot seat this year, but after talking with Mike Buddy, TCU's new athletic director, and hearing kind of the mandate he's given, Sonny said as much. He said anything less than making a Big 12 championship game is probably not a successful season for TCU football this fall. That being said, Vegas set the win total at 6.5. So I think people are high on TCU and what they're capable of. But when you look at, you've got it up here right now, when you look at that schedule, it's going to be an absolute meat grinder this fall.
Anybody who schedules 2 Power 5s in non-conference play, they have my utmost respect. So I love that trip to North Carolina, of course, and all the fanfare. And you're going to be there, right?
Oh, yeah, my flight and my hotel are booked. Yes.
Okay. And then, like you mentioned, the SMU game where they gave up a zillion points last year against the Mustangs. And then right into Big 12 play, which this is the only conference where I hesitate to say, well, this is the tough stretch and this is the easy stretch and all that, because we know what we've seen the last few years. But I think, I got a pretty good gauge that Kansas State's going to be one of the best teams in the conference. And
for sure,
they're one of the certainties. But Colorado right out of the gate after Arizona State, and then Kansas State, and people love Baylor this year.
Sawyer Robertson. I mean, to me, it comes down to Arizona State, Baylor, and TCU when you look at the top quarterbacks in this conference. And Noah Fafita's a guy who, was a Heisman candidate for a portion just 2 seasons ago. So, Baylor, at least it's in Fort Worth this year. That Baylor game went down to the wire a season ago in Waco. You get him in Fort Worth, but Sawyer Robertson has a lot of positive buzz around him, and he should. He's great.
Get through the first 7 conference games. And then again, we're not saying this for sure, but Houston and Cincinnati should be the light touch on the schedule.
And
And
we lost to Houston at home last year, so
yeah, that was a
should be.
surprise. You were like a two
That
touchdown
was a
favorite in that
wake
game.
up call. That was a wake up call for that team. Iowa
Yeah,
State, Rocco Beck is really good. Like he's another one that's one of the
sure.
elite quarterbacks in this league, but you get them in Fort Worth. Yeah, BYU is a huge wild card, but nobody wants to go play in Provo in November. Like that's never an easy thing.
No doubt. So, Melissa, let's run through the defense that was like a top 45 defense. How many changes on that side of the ball?
Not much, and I think that's the biggest positive is you bring. This is the first year since Sonny Dykes has been at TCU that he's brought back both of his coordinators. So you have continuity in the offices and on the field. You also, because of the all of the rulings and the settlements and the rules that change every other week, you got back 3 really important pieces. Bud Clark is able to play an additional year at safety. He is going to be the quarterback of that defense. He's a high IQ player that had NFL aspirations, but because of NIL, because of the opportunities, is a guy that was able to stay in Fort Worth and play one more season of college football. That is a giant win for TCU. In the middle, you bring back another big win in Namdi Obiezar. Namdi is one of the elite linebackers. He's a little bit of a tweener, kind of a hybrid. As he went through the NFL pre-draft process, they said, listen, like you got to get bigger, you got to get up to about 230 pounds, and you can't lose a step. And Namdi was able to do that. So that was a huge win. And then Devin Deal comes back as well. He's a Tulane transfer that had double-digit sacks 2 seasons ago at Tulane. Came in last year, fought through a couple of injuries, but is a really, really elite player at the front. So you've got a great safety group, a very experienced safety group. You get back a couple of corners. Avery Helm comes back off of injury. And so you get some guys back on the outside defensively. The linebacking unit should be a top 2 or 3 unit in this conference. It's really deep. It's a little bit young. But there's some really great athletic guys there that can kind of play multiple ways, come down to the line of scrimmage and stop the run or drop back into pass coverage. And Nambi's kind of the straw that stirs the drink in that regard. And then the front, I mean, the defensive line was really bad at stopping the run last year, like really, really bad. We all got very excited about the offensive run game in fall camp because they were breaking off these long runs. And then we pretty much realized it's because that D line can't stop anybody. So they improved the second half of the season. They talked about how they kind of simplified things, how they are much more comfortable with the playbook and the terminology on defense with the year 2 under Andy Avalos and a full offseason. There, get some guys back from injury there, and Paul Oyewale and Michael Ibuke Kande, I think we call him MIO. And so if those guys can come back and perform at a high level, you've got a really deep front too. Marcus Deal has a chance to be defensive player of the year. He kind of plays on that D line and in that star position. So there is depth there. Again, like you said, it's July. I think everybody's great on both sides of the ball for TCU, but until you actually, put the lights on that Monday night in Chapel Hill, it's going to be hard to say. We know what they're capable of on paper. We've seen these guys in different iterations be accomplished athletes. That if they can all pull it together, this defense should be very, very solid and at least do enough to make sure that the offense can A, overcome the occasional turnover, and B, doesn't have to score 40 points to win a game.
You were ripping through those names. Those are some
Yeah.
tough ones
Whew.
there. I'm
I
looking
know
at them. I
it's
went
tough.
right to the roster here. Like, how did they spell those? I was just trying to follow along there.
It's the tagging photos that I do in games helps me get really good at spelling the last names of these athletes.